I'm excited to talk about this one because it is something that I've been dealing with a lot personally, as well as breaking out of a fear cycle. And sometimes it comes back around. I feel like I did a lot of healing with my relationship to fear, and now I feel like fear has wrestled back up in the death of my brother Joe, and some of that fear it's kind of sitting in there again. And I'm feeling into it and noticing and talking to it and asking what is it that I'm afraid of? And in that conversation with my own personal fear, I've realized that I'm afraid of another trauma. I'm afraid of another loss. I'm afraid that I'm going to lose somebody else really close to me in my life. And while it's a reasonable fear because now I've lost both my brothers, it's not something that my special emotional but physical body, either of those bodies. So we have our subtle energy body, which resides in which resides our emotional body, and we have our physical body, and fear penetrates all of those. It doesn't discriminate on where it is. It's penetrating all of those different bodies that are part of us as a human being. And so I'm noticing that while the fear seems rational in some sense because of this great loss, it's also something that I don't want to be carrying with me, right? And it can become a cycle in our life. So there was more to Aubriana's question here, but I just wanted to address this one specific piece at least first. So when we're living in a state of fear, it's probably multi-layered and it's probably very personal to you. So I cannot give you a specific thing to do to get out of the fear or to release it because it's so unique to each of us. Like the story I just told, the fear I've been experiencing lately is very unique to me. And if you told me to go do some kind of cookie cutter exercise, well, that might not work for me based on what the deeper root of my fear is. And so I'm going to point you in this direction, but I also want you all to realize that it's very unique to you, and I definitely encourage you to get outside resources or individual support to be able to work through it. So my resource is my book, 21 Days of Healing, which came out in November, right after Joe died. And so it's interesting because in the unraveling of loss, I put out this healing resource that I feel like I've needed a lot. So day 12 inside of the book is called Fuck Fear. And it is all about, well, I tell a lot of stories in here, but I start with a story around, I used to experience a stalker, and I was living in a state of survival, a state of fear, because I was very terrified of this man showing up at my workplace, showing up at my house, and potentially hurting me or somebody I loved. And so there was a lot of triggers that came up around that. And I was noticing how paralyzing fear was in my life. And so this is something that helped me, and I think it's going to help you, but I also encourage anyone who feels like they're in a cycle of fear, get to the deeper root of it. And so the first step is to acknowledge. I'm taking this directly from the book. The first step is to acknowledge it. And so you say, hi, fear, like I see you. I see you trying to keep me on high alert for some reason, because our bodies are divinely intelligent and just innately self-healing and protective. So our bodies are not going to live in a state of fear for shits and giggles. We're in a state of fear because of something, and our bodies are always trying to protect us and keep us safe. So I want you to consider, my body's on high alert. It's in a state of fear to protect me for some reason. Then you realize that not all fear is bad. Sometimes fear is an indication of excitement, passion, strong feelings towards something, and it's one way that our bodies continuously try to keep us safe. So sometimes fear isn't even bad. Sometimes you're afraid to launch a program, but it's actually just because you're so excited and like nervous excitement around it. Whereas other times fear is because of a trauma, because of a loss, because of something to do with your health or a relationship, etc. Our basic needs and our emotions. So I want you to notice what flavor of fear is coming up as you acknowledge it and you start to talk to it. Step 2 is to give it a name. What are you afraid of? What is this fear showing you that you're afraid of? And I encourage you to close your eyes, put your hands on your belly, and ask yourself, what am I afraid of? What is this fear showing me? What is the deeper root here? And try not to overthink it. And then there's a box inside the book for you to see what intuitively comes up for you without trying to figure it all out. Just notice what comes up. And I put some examples inside the book as well. And then I asked another question. What do you feel afraid of? And take some time to write down any of these fears that are surfacing, that are coming up, and they're messages for you. They're messages from your body, from your mind, that are, again, trying to keep you safe, but maybe kind of getting in the way of your life. And so we have to talk to them. We have to communicate to them so that they know that they're not actually helping, that there's a negative side effect here. So I'll leave you with that to at least start. Bring your hands to your belly, start to talk to it, communicate with it, intuitively feel into it. What is it trying to do for you, trying to tell you, trying to communicate to you, trying to keep you safe from? And then I want you to continue that conversation with it so you can try to understand it. And as we understand it and we open up lines of communication with it, oftentimes it starts to heal itself. There's a couple more pages in here with additional exercises that I'd love for you guys to try as well as an example of how I wrote a letter to my fear in relation to the story I told at the beginning of this chapter, which is, again, day 12 of my book, 21 Days of Healing, called Fuck Fear. We can completely transform our relationship to it. Part of that transformation is noticing when fear is not actually something negative, but instead something that's showing us excitement in our lives. Sometimes it's that flavor of fear, that nervous excitement as well. Okay, see you guys.